a number of steps you need to go through when you're thinking of something that's more of a significant home renovation. It's something more than just a bath remodel. It's something that is pretty significant for your home. It's not like going to the grocery store and buying a watermelon, right? You can't just show up and purchase this. There's a lot of planning, a lot of thought that you put into it. Today, the presentation is all about just those steps in going into planning. I'm going to be giving you some overview of financing options and different things that are out there in the marketplace so that you can get a really good exposure today, leaving this presentation kind of armed and ready to start doing some thoughtful planning for a long-term project. But just to kind of go over the highlights as far as things that we're going to cover, we're going to be talking about developing a needs and wants list, determining the right ways to complete them. The one question that always comes up with a significant remodel, move or improve, is this the house to be doing this on? That's a great question. We're going to be talking about that. Making a commitment to your house, 7 to 10 years, we're going to talk about what that is, why is 7 to 10 years so critical. Determining a construction value that works in your neighborhood. So it's, from a financial standpoint, does the amount of work that you're doing make sense for where you're living? That's part of the consulting that I do anyway, but it's things that you need to think about as a consumer. Choosing the right financial tool for you and then starting design of your project. Let the fun begin, basically. So a needs and wants list. So there's needs that are pressing you into considering a remodel. We're in February, we're not that far removed from the holidays. You probably tried having people over, you're tripping over yourselves. It's still a hot topic in your house maybe. You're ready to do something about it, taking action. So you need to start with what your wants are. And it's not about just having it good enough because you've lived in a condition that maybe you've been in a confined galley-style kitchen for years. And you're like, boy, if I could just get an extra foot, my life would be so different. Well, when you're thinking about needs and wants and the ideals, you have to think a little beyond that. So it's changing your realm of thinking altogether. And some of that comes with going to open houses, going to remodeler showcase events. There's a remodeler showcase that's coming up here at the end of March. And I don't have brochures here for that, but I can get you that as resources, walking through homes that have those ideal conditions so that you can compare and contrast to what you have in a living environment now. So things that our clients talk about a lot and that we provide from a design aspect. Open kitchen plans. So it's the lifestyle that we live now. A lot of the houses we work on in 30s, 40s, 50s, very compartmentalized homes, right? Everything's formalized. The dining room has its own space. The front quadrant of the house is separate. It's a small sitting room. Nothing communicates. Now our lifestyles are a lot different. We want the kitchen to communicate with the dining. The dining does not necessarily have to be as formal as what we once required. And then how that communicates visually with the living space adjacent. So you want those three areas to work really well. That's a very common thing we hear from our clients. So those are great needs and wants things for you to be bringing to the table with any type of designer. A mudroom. What would a mudroom do for your house if you don't have it right now? It's still topical with the winter still being here. We have pantry, walk-in storage, hardwood floors. You can go through the list and just take a look at it. Better curb appeal. But these are ideals, and it's okay to have the ideals. So it's a shift in thinking. It's a shift in thinking from what you currently have. Yeah, that's what I even wrote. Anything would be better than the kitchen I currently have. So I had a client the other day that talked about pantry storage. Oh, we don't currently have any. And I said, well, how much would you like to have? She goes, well, if I could have a cabinet kind of like this that I could put my stuff in, that would be great. I said, how about I get you a walk-in pantry and you can put everything in there. You can put your roasters, you can put all those things in one spot. So it's stretching your mind a little bit, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But whenever you're considering doing a significant renovation, there's environmental factors to think about. Now, this is outside of a remodeler, and I understand that, but in experience and working with clients, there's a psychological process you need to go through when you're looking at doing a significant renovation. And basically, you want to be all in. You want to know that you're living in the right area. And so that's why I just jot down some of these things. So I think they're really good things to talk about. And if you're married, talk about it as a couple. Neighborhood, do you enjoy where you live? Do you think this is the right location for you to be doing what you're going to be doing? Do you have access to the things that are important to you, whether it be shopping, schools, transportation, whatever your lifestyle is, whatever the things are important to you, do you feel like this is the spot that gets you that? With the amount of money needed to invest, does this make sense for the neighborhood? You're going to get a little bit more context to that once you get a renovator involved, but these are things to be thinking about. In general, if your neighborhood has some dumpsters, if there's some improvement going on in the area, you don't want to be the nicest house in the block. That still holds true if you talk to real estate professionals. They're going to say, okay, you're going to want to be aware of that as you're getting into things. Is there any other renovating happening in the area? We talked about that. What are the opportunities for securing necessary appraisal? I'm going to talk about that a little bit more coming up. A little more from the financial aspect, comps, appraisals, how that process all works. What does that look like? It can be a little overwhelming at times. And the natural question, should we consider moving? This seems overwhelming. Maybe it's just easier to go buy a different house. And that's legitimate. Those are legitimate questions to ask. Things you should entertain. So move or improve, and this is probably one of the most common things that I get asked about, is when I come out for consults with clients, it's, we're not sure what to do, whether we should move or improve, what makes sense. And so I say, well, you need to compare and contrast, moving and improving, because if you move, there's going to be things that need to happen with that new house too, right? So some of those environmental factors are going to lead you to, let's say you just, at the end of the day, you have a discussion, you say, we just don't feel like we're in the right area. We would really like to relocate and be in a different city or whatever it might be. Well, then that's going to kind of lead you down that path. But it's important to kind of list your compares, contrasts, to kind of look at it. Your existing home obviously needs improvement. You keep your existing area. The thing you do get to do in your existing house, you get to put your stamp on it. So you're going to have all new finishes. You get to do it the way that fits your lifestyle rather than still inheriting something different in another house. And maybe that house needs significant renovation too. But sometimes you can move up. If you're in a one-level house now and you can go purchase a two-level house, sometimes that makes sense. And it can still make sense in this real estate market. The deals are still out there for you yet. But you're still going to probably inherit a house that needs some minor fix-ups. It's going to need some minor modifications, needs improvement. How do the finishes compare to what I would have in a totally renovated house? So you need to look at that. New environment, schools, moving costs, and limited supply of housing stock. That just happens to be a current condition. The housing supply is pretty low right now. And so if there are houses that come into the market in those good sweet spot areas, they are not lasting very long. So there's a little bit of a game plan you put together for that. If moving is your scenario, okay, well, let's get aggressive about it and be ready to go. So that when let's have an agent on our side that's going to be representing us, so that when those opportunities do come up, you can be on it. Because right now in the current market, those opportunities will not last 48 hours. The good ones. Real estate fees. So just average cost of moving. Anytime I talk about move or improve, you have to take into account what moving costs really are. On an average $300,000 home, you're looking at about $40,000. If you really put a value on what your time is worth, and sometimes it's our time, in changing all the addresses, in getting everything lined up, and getting movers lined up, or doing the moving yourselves. There's time and costs that go into everything. Time, value, money. So this is on a typical home. Tell my clients, I say, figure on about $40,000 of real dollars that you need to take into account when you're comparing whether to renovate or to move. So from the financial aspect, that does play a role. It should be considered anyway. And so if you're shopping for new houses or different houses, what you look at is the current home price. So let's say it's a $300,000 house that you're considering. What is the investment amount needed, and then what are the moving costs, and that's your new home price point. And I say you kind of take that into compare and contrast with your existing house. If it's a $200,000 house and we need to put $200,000 into it, that's like a $400,000 house, and you can compare that with something different in the market that maybe does not need as much renovating work, but you add your moving costs into it, and all of a sudden, boy, they're pretty close. That's good to know, right? I mean, those are things that you want to do and want to know prior to getting into that type of situation. And I think, the experience has been for me is that when you kind of go through what seems like a little more of an antiquated process in the front end in evaluating and testing, it makes you more committed to whatever path you choose to go down. You feel like you've done a good job really evaluating all of your options. You kind of laid them out in front of you. Now you might need to partner with a renovator or a design build firm to kind of help provide some of the pieces to consult with that. As just an example, our company will meet with clients and we'll walk through homes with them to help give them what the approximate fixed costs are for those, so repair costs or renovating costs, so you can have that to compare and contrast with your existing house, and if that makes sense. So you might have to partner with someone to help get that feedback, but the more educated you are, the more information you have that's accurate, the better decision that you can make. And I think that's where a lot of people languish and have complications is they don't have all the information or they're not an expert in an area and they feel like they are kind of out there on their own, which is a tough place to be. So making a commitment, 7 to 10 year window, why is that so important? So anytime you make a significant remodel, your return on investment has a certain lifespan to it. The cost of renovating typically doubles every 8 to 10 years, right? So in a kitchen, you're going to get payback very quickly, almost within a year or two. You almost have full payback on a kitchen. But when you do a large-scale renovation, you probably won't realize full return on your investment until you kind of hit that 7-year mark. And then you're going to probably be able to recapture most of that equity in your home at that point. The reason, in some neighborhoods, you're getting instant equity. There's certain neighborhoods in Edina, for instance, where we're going to do significant remodels for clients, and as soon as that project is done, they could sell it for that and more in certain areas. And so that's reality. And so every real estate market being a little bit different. But you have to take that into account, because if you're forced into a situation where you need to move, or if your lifestyle is such that you're like, my employment could possibly change and I might get relocated in 2 years. And whether your corporation is going to cover those costs or not, I mean, those are things for you to think about, because you need to have an exit strategy if something does not happen to go your way. Just things to think about anyway. But 7 to 10 year window, I say, is very typical, and in a lot of neighborhoods, it's significantly less. It just depends. So having that idea, and sometimes that consultation comes in with a real estate agent, where you can have that context for what's been happening in the market in those particular areas, and just having that as feedback. So for larger renovations also, we're going to contemplate whether to renovate or to tear the house down. There's some homes that, when you're thinking about something that's very large scale, that it actually makes more sense at a certain point to just, if it's the right property, to just scrape the house and to start with new framing, or if it needs new foundation work or whatever. Cost per square foot goes down significantly with new construction. So you can get a considerably different product from a construction standpoint when you build new. You can go 9-foot ceilings. You can build in some of the aesthetic features that you can't in your existing home, that maybe your house is just confining you. Maybe your basement height is 7 feet, and you want to get more headroom so you can have a nice rec room in the basement. Okay, the only way we can really do that, of course, you can jack the house up and add another course of block. That's the way to do it. And it depends if the envelope of the house offers any other energy efficiency barriers. Does your house leak like a sieve? Would it be best just to go all new construction so you have all the new insulating standards and all those things? And maybe the floor plan is very prohibitive on the main level, and your designer or remodeler just cannot come up with a workable concept. That's all part of that contemplation. but you're going to entertain this once you have that property secured that you feel is like the right location for you. It fits those environmental things for you, whether it's your existing house or it's a new property, whatever it is. But these are good things to contemplate. What are the assets of the house? If it has new heating, cooling systems, all those types of things. Going through that in a laundry list fashion to make sure you get everything evaluated. Those are just environmental things to consider anyway. Financing products. So different products that are available in the market, and it depends on the size of the project. But these are just it's just a general list. Cash, obviously, or how to best leverage it. So I do have a lot of clients, and I don't provide financial consulting, but a lot of times I just provide guidance and say, in general, from a philosophy standpoint, if you have a considerable amount of cash to put towards a project, sometimes you can do projects and tackle your house in incremental ways, where maybe you do the kitchen now, you can do the bathroom next year, you could do the basement in 3 years, and you're paying cash for all those projects. And what I provide to clients, I say, okay, let's look at the scenario where maybe if you did those all at once and used like a construction loan product to finance those all at the same time, and you can leverage the cash you would have spent on just doing the kitchen by itself and leverage that towards a bigger transaction and having bank financing to balance it out. We'll talk about that in a little bit too, but that's a different way of thinking. We work with clients on both sides. We do have some clients where you have a whole house plan, and then you're just going from one project to another, to another, to another. Just keep working your way through your house and getting everything renovated over maybe a 6, 7, 8 year period. You have 4 or 5 different projects. And then we have some where we just have our clients move out, get everything done on main level and upper level all at one time, and you can be done. So different ways to do it, obviously. Home equity loan or Center for Energy and Environment. That is it's a nonprofit here in the Twin Cities area that has kind of administers the loan products. Let's say for like the city of St. Louis Park, their Move Up in the Park program, different financing pieces. Center for Energy and Environment is a place to check out. Their loan products typically are good up to about $30,000. Energy improvements, you can go on their website and check it out. They're a very good agency to work with, but you're kind of looking at $30,000 and under. Home equity loans, it just depends on your length of time you've been in your house with the housing market, the direction that's gone. I don't have a lot of clients that have equity in their houses, but when you do a project the right way and you factor in the right conditions that you're adding value to the house, you can absolutely add value and to still put you in a good equity position on your property. Cash out refinance, that's kind of the same, just a little bit different. And then the construction loan. So construction loans, most products over the last 2 to 3 years, I'll just use an example of a $200,000 house with a $200,000 renovation. Keep the math simple for me. But that'd be a total of $400,000 if that's the note that you have that you're looking to finance. So the banks in the past have said 20% of that is what you need to bring to the table in either the form of cash or equity to really get that construction project moving. Now, that would mean you'd have about $80,000 in cash if I'm working the math correctly in my head. But it depends on what your property is worth. You could have a mortgage that's $200,000, but maybe your property is worth $300,000. Okay, so then you're going to have some equity to play with there too. So that'll affect the amount of cash that you would bring to the transaction. That in the combination of factors of credit score, other assets that you can pledge, it's almost like a formula. And the private banks are going to take all of those things into account. If you have an awesome credit score but you don't have 20% cash, they might say, well, you could pledge some assets if it's you have vacation home or some other asset that you could also leverage towards the transaction. That can absolutely work, and private banks are taking a look at that stuff now. But now the market is starting to come back. Banks are getting more comfortable. We're in one of the stronger renovating markets in the country. We're in top 5 per capita for renovating investment in the country. So we're in a very good area. So banks are starting to recognize that, and they're getting more comfortable with the stabilization of the real estate market. So now they're starting to push loan products to 85, and last week I even heard of a product going to 90% LTV. So that means is that the banks are now starting to put a little more skin in the game. Entities like Wells Fargo and U.S. Bank, when things were really tight, they were at about 75%, for their loan products, and some of you maybe experienced that when you were maybe doing research. So this is significantly different, and I'm not saying that that is carte blanche with all banks, but there are some that are starting to do it, and so that's why I bring it today, because it's current and fresh information anyway. Smaller private banks. So it's like a group of investors. So the question was, what banks are actually providing that as a product? The smaller banks that have pools of investors that they can look at you as a credit risk, that have that type of accountability, are going to be the ones that are going to be more aggressive. Because they can look at you and your family, they look at your situation, your credit score, and more times than not, they're going to offer the most flexibility. So the resources that I'm sending you home with today are people that work with those banks. It's total third party from my entity, but you can have consultations with those people in total confidentiality and say, here's our situation, here's where we live, here's what we can contribute, and they can help shape that financial piece for you, which is fantastic. Now it's outside of the Wells and U.S. Bank formula, but that's getting more to those private investors that'll be able to get access to some of these opportunities. For those of you that would be an advantage anyway. Creative financing, so family gift. There's times when that does come up, that a family gift could possibly be in the mix for helping to provide money towards a transaction. And I'm not a tax accountant, so you check with your accountant. But just remember that IRS guidelines, $10,000 is really a maximum gift before you have to consider that as taxable income. Yeah, so the question is there ever a construction loan that keeps your primary mortgage just as it is and then brings in a secondary to fund the construction costs? And that would be more of a product like a home equity loan. That a lot of times that's a secondary note if you have equity into your property. What a construction loan does is that, so go back to the $200,000 example we were using before. You have a $200,000 mortgage, you're going to do a $200,000 renovation. So what a construction loan does is it purchases that initial $200,000 mortgage and rolls that into another product. So you have $200,000 mortgage, which was just purchased, and then you're going to finance the construction. So probably once a month, they're going to be distributing funds on your behalf to pay a contractor for the renovation work going on, and you'll be paying interest only on that loan amount during construction. Then what's going to happen is that at the end of construction, that loan is going to close. Most likely there'll be another appraisal, and then that will all get consolidated together into one product, or it could be a 1 and a 2. It depends on the formula. So if you're 85 or 90%, you're looking at probably a 80% because that's a maximum, and then probably a secondary note to go along with that. And then you're locked in, and you have the full array of products available as far as interest rates, term limits, if you want to go 15-year, 30-year. But what I'm advising clients on general right now is interest rates are fantastic. Lock yourself in. Lock yourself in. I think it's a great opportunity right now from that standpoint. Any other questions on the financing piece? Kind of understand the construction loan piece as far as what that is. It's a great product when used the right way, obviously. I don't usually recommend it for projects, and we'll be coming to that too, of a smaller size, because there are fees associated with doing those products, and it just, if you're going to pay $8,000-9,000 in fees, why would you use that for a $50,000 project, for instance? That just And normally I'll tell people just save up cash or use it in conjunction with the Center for Energy loan, or that can be a great way to do that. So factors considered with a construction loan, you have to pre-qualify, obviously. You need to, right now I believe 740 credit score is generally what they're looking for. So it is good to pull your credit score and to see where you're at if you're considering this in the next year or two. Because if your credit is a little lower, there's probably some things you can do to repair it in preparation for when that time comes. So the people that have done that have generally been in a much stronger position, and the financing people I have here can do that stuff for you too. They will work with you and help advise you on the things that need to happen. Comparables or comps. You often hear about having to secure comps this, comps that. And with the real estate market, when it was kind of in a free fall here this last couple years, even just selling a regular property could be a little bit of a challenge, because it's great that you agreed upon on a price, but now is there actually a comp to support that? And a lot of times it came up no. People were having to adjust prices and bring them down because banks were not comfortable because there was no product selling at that price point. So now in a construction loan, it's different. It's different. So if your house is the $200,000 house, we're not comparing it against $200,000 houses anymore. We're looking at it against what we're going to become, and that's going to be the $400,000 plus house. And let's say, for instance, we're going to do a second floor in the house, and we're going to add 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. We're going to have a total of 2,600 square feet. I'm going to have 4 bedrooms, 3 baths in the house. Now we're going to take that product for what we're going to become, and we're going to see what is selling in that bracket. And that's where we're going to find our comparables to support a construction loan. So it's a little bit of a different idea related to that. Because I have some people that get confused by that, saying, well, with our house, I mean, Natalie next door, her house just appraised at $15,000 less than what ours is even. How is that going to work? I go, well, it's different because we're leapfrogging. We're going to another level that we're comparing against. And so the appraisers will not just pull from your block, but generally from a quarter-mile radius around your house. And so even if it's not in your block, if we don't have a lot of activity, there might be some neighborhoods close by where we have some sales that are happening. And you can even do an informal appraisal for yourself. And you can go edinarealty.com and you can click on properties sold within a certain price bracket. And you can see what properties have sold for. And you're looking for comps that are within the last 6 to 9 months. That's generally what the bank and the appraisers are going to be looking for. So you can even do that on your own behalf and just see if there's things out there. Edina Realty, obviously there's other websites you can do that on too. Theirs is very user-friendly from the map perspective, so you can kind of look at it within a certain radius, and it'll list out for you the properties. It's an invaluable resource. After improved value. So what is your house worth after the completion of the project? So we're looking for comps, but we're also looking at what we're going to develop for an after improved value. That's the results of your comps, and the assessment by the appraiser is your after improved value. So we have the $200,000 mortgage, the $200,000 investment in remodeling, and so we have $400,000 that we're basically looking to deal with. The appraiser maybe is going to come back and say, your house after improvement is going to be worth $475,000. That's your after improved value. And that all plays into the equation of how much cash you would need to bring to the equation. So just based on the math that we did, there's a $75,000 cushion in there. That is equity that you already have in that after improved product. That's awesome. That's what we're hoping for. Because then that can be leveraged towards the whole transaction. It's all taken into account with your credit score, your cash that you bring, so on and so forth. So that's great. So quality design does matter because appraisals and appraisers do recognize that. If it has a less than stellar facade, they're going to account for that, and that's going to be taken into account with the value. If it's a floor plan that's not working, or if it's interior finishes that are, very low, that will be taken into account with the value when they do that. So sometimes with larger projects, it's beginning with the end in mind. What is the highest priced home that your neighborhood can support? So when we do those desktop appraisals, edinarealty.com, we can get a snapshot of what similar homes are that we're trying to become that. What are those homes selling for? And then let's work the math backwards and figure out what kind of renovation budget we need to work within in order to create that. And I think that's probably the most crucial part, is that gives you a clear path to getting what you can, or maybe you're getting feedback that there's just nothing there. You're going to know that very quickly. There are appraisers that you can go through. You pay an upfront appraisal fee. The most typical appraisal fee is $350. And you actually can go through a whole exploration of this process based on what you're trying to do with your home. So that way you can actually have them do comps and show you what the comparables are in order to kind of, I call it, you have financial pre-qualification for yourself, your credit score, your cash, but it's almost like financially pre-qualifying your project. You're kind of going through the paces to see if what we want to do can be done. And this takes a little bit of time. It takes a couple of months. But the good part being, in doing all this pre-qualifying and this pre-work, is that when you start to design and you're going to pay money to have design done, guess what? You're probably on the pathway to success because you have the roadmap laid out for what you're going to do and how you're going to get there. And then it's just a matter of executing the steps in between. So that is... it's a different philosophy. It's a different approach. So I put that out there as just food for thought. So financing options, just in general, when I talk about projects of less than $30,000, let's say our approach is we're going to do the incremental projects through the house on a cash basis. Cash, equity, or some sort of loan product, maybe CE loan. Great way to finance those projects. Fantastic. Just kind of work your way through the house and just keep plugging away. $30,000 to $100,000 of investment, cash equity or a small loan. If you have a little bit of equity in the house, cash out refi, those are great ways to finance those. I've had some clients that just delay doing a project for a year because they know they're going to be able to squirrel away a little bit more money to help pay for it. And that's okay too. That's knowing that you're on a pathway to get there sometimes makes the holidays a little more reasonable to deal with, knowing that you have a plan in place that's going to be executed. And then anything over $100,000, that can make sense for the construction loan. I think that can come into play at that point because you start leveraging your cash in a good way. It's a product that can roll everything all together. It's a very good product. Not all banks are doing it, by the way. So you might have loan with a particular bank, and they might not do construction loans. It's always best to check with your bank and your mortgage person first, because you can get probably the best deal because they carry your loan product now. They're probably going to be best and more willing to give you deals on the origination fees, on all those types of things, and all the paperwork piece, because they generated all that in-house already. So that's what I usually recommend. And then you're ready to start designing. So once you have the roadmap laid, you're ready to jump into it and get started. And that's where the fun really begins. You can actually start working with, and I generally am a little more of a proponent for design build firms. I think they're a little better prepared and they have the intellectual capital to help with this type of scenario that we're talking about, because they have design and construction costs in tension at all points. They're going to be able to give you all that direct feedback and keep you on course so that you're designing a project that fits with the budget that you're trying to create for a project. So don't hesitate. This is an important point, I think, too. So if you go through all this pre-qualification, you do that on your own, you work with your banker or whatever, and you go through all these steps, and you kind of come up with a financial formula. It is important, once you start interviewing design build firms, to share your anticipated budget with those people. If you don't have a design build person involved while you're developing that, engage them. I think it's important to share that, because they're going to give you direct feedback on whether they feel like it's reasonable or not. before you ever spend a dime on drawing something. And I think that's important, is always trying to preserve your cash position, preserve your investment as much as you can. I mean, we all want to be cost conscious and smart about how we spend our money. So be open and share that with them. And likewise, they're going to give you candid feedback also. So during this design process, you'll receive a definite price from your builder. So you'll usually pay some sort of design retainer fee to start with the creation of some construction drawings. And as those drawings kind of go through a process of going from concept sketches to something very finite, likewise your builder will go from concept pricing to finite pricing as they can come out with all their vendors and getting everything verified and validated. So it's a good definitive process, and you're going to know what all options that you have from A to Z. One of the important things that I think it's important, this is just a process standpoint from how we do it in-house, but anytime you're going in for an appraisal, and we've done construction, for construction loan, we've done all the construction drawings. It's putting together, before we go in for appraisal, what I call the B list of items in your project. So when you get to a definitive project price, most times, and I think this is smart for whatever design build firm you work for, but you have a la carte list of items on the side that do not necessarily affect the appraisal price of the house. Let's say you were going to upgrade all the tile in your master bath, $5,000. You were going to really juice it up. Or you have some extra cabinetry for some hall linens on the second floor. That was going to be an extra $5,500. But all those little a la carte things really all add up, but they don't really affect an appraisal. At the end of the day, you're still creating a base number of bedrooms, base number of baths with good finishes, granite tops, all those types of things. But if the appraisal came in a little light, you know what? These are all areas that you could take from and reduce the cost of the project if you needed to. But it doesn't affect the overall appraisal. I think that's an important piece to all this, because psychologically, if an appraisal comes in a little bit light, most people feel, oh, I can't do my project. I go, well, not necessarily if you plan it right. It's just the feedback that you needed to get at some point. If you properly prepared, and if your builder did a good job of laying everything out for you, you should probably have that B list of items that you can start taking from that maybe has $25,000 to $30,000 worth of things that you can pull out that does not necessarily affect your appraisal price. I think that's smart planning. Now, sometimes the appraisals, a year or two ago were coming in $60,000 to $80,000 to $100,000. We just need to wait then. And that's, the design work is done. Your ideal plan is in place, and then we just need the real estate market to shift a little bit, and we need to have some sales happen to help provide those comps that are going to support your project. And then it's a matter of just monitoring that. So it can seem like a complicated process. You work with the right people, and you can really provide a really nice, streamlined, tangible way to get from A to Z. And I think that's the most important thing. Lifestyles are not getting any less busy. You need streamlined processes and tangible ones to get from where you're at to where you want to go. And this is my email. I have some business cards somewhere around here. You're welcome to contact me. Main thing at the end of the day, I want to make sure that you have the resources that you need to tackle what you want to. So, resources up here for you today. I guess we do have evaluation forms. If you so choose to fill one out, they would love to have that feedback on if I provided what you were looking for today for input. Or if not, that's okay too. Some information on the loans and financing, and then if you're interested in just staying up to date with things going on with my company, you're welcome to just sign up for a newsletter, and I can keep you plugged in on that. Otherwise, appreciate you coming today and coming to the fair.